Detective Agatha Christie's novel The Pale Horse about poisoning inspired one of the most brutal serial killers in modern Russia, Vyacheslav Solovyov. They found the book at his home and even read passages from it in court. Solovyov got rid of his wife, daughter, mistress, took the life of a newborn baby, a helpless old woman, and an investigator. He easily remained unpunished. From the outside, it seemed that all his victims died of natural causes. The poisons he used to take their lives left no traces. Today in the video is material from the publication 86.ru, the story of one of the most brutal serial maniacs in modern Russia. How did it all happen, and why was it only Vyacheslav Solovyov's own father who noticed his true nature? In the early 2000s, Vyacheslav Solovyov worked at a car service station and lived with his family in a small apartment near Yaroslavl, in a place behind the giant apartment blocks where there was nothing but fields. Solovyov had a privileged upbringing, with his father managing the city's largest factory and his mother being a homemaker. He later served in the Caucasus, where he sustained an injury. In the present, the future maniac's life included a wife, homemaker Olga, a teenage daughter Nastya, and a love for gambling. Olga, tired of living in debt, often voiced her complaints to Vyacheslav about the family's poor financial situation. The future maniac blamed his wife for his failures. 2 years before his first killing, he read an article in the newspaper about what was happening beyond the Urals. The husband first killed his wife with poison, and then decided to poison his business partner, recalls Dmitry Adrianov, who solved the case of the Yaroslavl poisoner 12 years ago. He was an investigator in the prosecutor's office. Now he is a prosecutor. The poison allowed him to do this latently, that is, to disguise the effect of the poison as another illness of the body. The thought of the possibility of taking a life with impunity never again left Vyacheslav Solovyov's mind. Solovyov found a dubious company in Yaroslavl that traded in chemicals and bought several types of powders containing heavy metals. For a dose capable of taking the lives of more than 100 people, Vyacheslav spent less than 10,000 rubles. The poison made from heavy metals that Solovyov used to take lives has no smell or taste, belongs to highly toxic poisons, and leads to a fatal outcome. It penetrates the body through the respiratory organs, intact skin, or the digestive tract. The first poison, when it entered the body, decomposed without a trace. The downside for the poisoner was that its deadly effect manifested immediately. The second poison left traces in the body but acted slowly and provoked some kind of illness, explained Dmitry Adrianov. For the next few months, Vyacheslav trained, read, calculated proportions, tested on himself, immediately administered the antidote and tried again. Ultimately, he poisoned the cat and knew it was time. But for reference, who exactly is Vyacheslav Solovyov? Vyacheslav Solovyov was born on March 12, 1970 in Yaroslavl. He grew up in a complete family. In 1988 he joined the army and was assigned to the Dzerzhinsky Internal Troops Division, where he suffered a serious traumatic brain injury after falling from a tower. After that, the young man began to experience episodes of unmotivated anger. According to some reports, while in the hospital, Solovyov suffocated his roommate with a pillow after an argument, but he got away with it. The case was hushed up. By the way, subscribe and hit the bell for this channel, like the video, and check out Strashnori's Telegram, the link is below the video. After returning from the army, Vyacheslav married Olga, who had waited for him to come back. He met her back in high school. In 1989 they had a daughter named Nastya. The maniac chose to kill his wife with an untraceable poison that leaves no trace in the body. On November 19, 2003, Solovyov sprinkled the deadly substance onto the fried fish for his wife. She immediately started feeling unwell, and Solovyov got scared and called an ambulance. Olga was saved at the hospital. Solovyov realized that using the first type of poison was dangerous, as it could be discovered. So after Olga was discharged, Vyacheslav decided to use another substance, the investigator said. On December 19, 2003, the maniac sprinkled poisonous powder into his wife's coffee. Olga sipped the drink, her heart racing and chest tightening with suffocation. She was hospitalized, and by the evening, Olga had passed away. The doctor's diagnosis was a coma of unknown etiology. The causes of the coma were unclear. Solovyov grieved deeply for his deceased wife, or more precisely, he enjoyed portraying grief. The maniac regularly went to the cemetery and cried demonstratively. The neighbors sympathized with the young widower, who now had to care for Solovyov's teenage daughter, in addition to coping with his loss. It was mesmerizing. He not only avoided suspicion but was also surrounded by human sympathy. Vyacheslav conceived the new murder even before Olga's funeral. For a long time, his neighbor Mikhail tormented him, and the good-for-nothing drunkard Solovyov sealed his fate. Vyacheslav couldn't come up with anything better than to mix the poison with red caviar. He wanted to treat his neighbor, so he put the opened jar in his fridge until a better moment. Fortunately for neighbor Mikhail, he went on a drinking binge, so the caviar remained in the fridge, the investigator recollects. A month and a half after her mother's death, at the end of winter 2004, 14-year-old Nastya was admitted to the hospital. The girl saw an opened jar in the fridge and ate a sandwich with the spoiled caviar. The maniac's daughter spent a month in the hospital. Nastya lost her hair, slept poorly and could hardly move. Her whole body hurt and her organs were damaged. In March 2004, she was released to continue treatment at home. For some time, Nastya stayed at the country house with her grandparents on her father's side, Vyacheslav's parents. She felt better for a short while. For 6 months, Solovyov's fear of retribution overpowered his love as he witnessed his daughter's agony. He didn't confess or explain to the doctors what was wrong with her, which could have saved her life. By the end of August, the illness that baffled the doctors got the better of Nastya. She passed away after the sudden death of his daughter-in-law and the prolonged illness of his granddaughter. The maniac's father suspected something was wrong. Valerie noticed a slight oddity in his son's behavior. The maniac received Nastya's autopsy report, but only checked the chemical analysis insert. It revealed no poisonous substances. Vyacheslav read the report to his father and snapped it shut. Valerie detected a hint of relief in his son's voice. After burying his wife and daughter, Solovyev kept up the grieving widower facade, and people believed him. A couple of months after Nastya's funeral, the maniac started seeing Irina Astakova. She sold goods at the market. By December 2004, Vyacheslav and Irina had moved in together. Solovyev soon grew bored with the relationship and decided to force Irina to leave him by convincing her that he was cursed. He told her that if she didn't break up with him, she would meet the same fate as all the others. Irina stayed with Vyacheslav in a coffin, possibly due to strong emotions or a wish to save him. Even warnings from the maniac's father didn't convince her. After meeting his son's new companion, Valerie decided to tell her about his daughter-in-law and granddaughter's deaths. He explained that he suspected his son of something bad. He tried to convince and warn Irina, but she just brushed off the old man. Slava visited sorcerers and psychics. A mirrored biofield formed around him, which negatively affects him and those around him, Irina argued with her father-in-law. In January 2005, Solovyev started routinely poisoning his mistress's morning coffee. She was getting worse and worse. Irina was fading before their eyes. In April, she was hospitalized. By then, the woman had lost her hair, spoke incoherently, and was immobile. Treatment was ineffective. In early May, Irina died. A year later, Solovyev started a relationship with Tatiana Ivanova, a sports coach with 2 young daughters. Both Solovyev and Tatiana were employed at the time. Their relationship even seemed normal. During the break between taking Irina's life and his next victims, the maniac entertained himself by putting a small amount of poison in his colleague's coffee at work. The dose wasn't lethal, but it caused diarrhea, vomiting, and stomach pain. The suspect would poison the driver's drink before a trip, causing stomach issues as soon as they started driving. This forced the driver to abandon the car and rush to the bushes, according to investigator Dmitry Andrianov. The jokes with poison ended in June 2006. The poisoner decided to settle scores with Tatiana after a minor domestic quarrel. Solovyov waited for a convenient moment to slip her some poison. At that time, they had been dating for about half a year. In the middle of the month, Solovyov went with Tatiana to visit her grandmother in Krasny Profinter. They chatted and drank tea at the house. Vyacheslav thought that the moment for taking a life was perfect, especially since he could take revenge for the insults twice over. To take the life not only of his lover but also of her elderly grandmother, Taisia. Left alone in the kitchen, Solovyev poured poison into the carafe with fruit drink and poured it into glasses. Both Taisia and Tatiana drank the poison. Almost immediately, they began to show symptoms. The women started vomiting, lost sensation in their hands, and their hair began to fall out, as if after radiation exposure. Old woman Taisia died in agony after a couple of days. For Tatiana, the dose was not fatal. However, it took a long time to recover. She had to regrow her thinning hair and take many medications to keep her internal organs functioning normally. After her grandmother's burial, Tatiana stayed with the poisoner, moving into a communal apartment on Trufanova Street shared with a young family. Tatiana's sister Maria, her husband Alexei, and their newborn son Pashenka lived next door. The maniac seemed normal to them. On February 23, 2007, Alexei and Solovyov were sitting in the kitchen drinking in honor of the holiday. Suddenly, Maria ran into them. "How much longer are you going to keep drinking? Something like that?" shouted Alexei's wife and grabbed the bottle of vodka from the table. In a fit of rage, Maria poured the contents into the sink. "Now you!" shouted Solovyev. Mentally, he pronounced the sentence on Maria. A week later, on the 3rd of March 2007, the poisoner poured the poison into the water carafe that was used only by the young parents. Soon they began to show the already known symptoms: stomach pain, hair loss, and nausea. On March 5th, 1-year-old Pashenka was admitted to the children's hospital. From reading the medical history of the little patient, you get goosebumps. With symptoms of central and peripheral nervous system damage, gastrointestinal tract, skin, mucous membranes, heart, respiratory organs, pronounced lethargy, interrupted and restless sleep, vomiting, stopped standing on his feet, ecchymosis, internal bleeding on the forehead, area of hyperemia on the mucous membrane of the cheek, shortness of breath up to 60 per minute, heart rate 136 per minute, mucus in the airways, depressed consciousness. Pashenka died the same day. His parents were soon hospitalized, prompting an investigation based on medical logic. Maria and Alexei were taken to the hospital in serious condition. The dose of poison that entered their bodies was enormous. The doctors who treated the couple recalled that many of Maria and Alexei's organs were affected. "We cleansed their blood, removed plasma with medications, and restored nerves and the heart muscle." Alexander Malgin, doctor at the clinical hospital. "We suspected that this was heavy metal poisoning based on the clinical picture, but which metals and how it happened is unknown." At that time, the organization of toxicology laboratories in Yaroslavl Oblast was poor. The centers only identified those substances that you specifically named to them. "The same level was present in forensic medicine," said the doctor treating the spouses, Alexander Malgin. The tests of Maria and Alexei were sent to a toxicology laboratory in St. Petersburg. The results of the study confirmed the doctor's suspicions. The couple spent 2 months in the hospital. Upon discharge, they reported the incident to the police, which is how I learned about this story. In spring 2007, Alexei submitted a statement to the Dzerzhinsky prosecutor's office reporting a poisoning. Alexei brought up the child's death in a way that implicated Vyacheslav Solovyov, who lived with them, according to what Alexei said. "Under strange circumstances, several close relatives died one after another," recalled Dmitry Adrianov. The facts of the poisoning were unique. Nothing like this had ever happened in the investigators' practice. "We became alert and started working not just in the Yaroslavl region, but across the entire country." By that time, almost the whole picture had already been put together. In 2003, Solovyov's wife died from a coma, with unclear theological implications. A year and a half later, 14-year-old Anastasia Solovyova also dies, for reasons that are unclear. Later, Irina Astakova was listed by the investigator. The investigators began to find out whether Solovyov had any criminal records. It turned out that he did. He was prosecuted under the article for intentional infliction of grievous bodily harm. The poisoner stabbed someone during a drunken fight. Valery Shcherbakov investigated the case. I knew him very well, and I remembered clearly that he had died suddenly. He was a strong man, charismatic and brutal. I vividly recall after a weekend returning to work and discovering that Valery had passed away due to a heart issue. "We compared these facts," said Dmitry Adrianov. "From a simple domestic crime, it immediately jumped to a higher level. The stakes were raised, the investigator lost his life. A few months before the death of police investigator Valery Shcherbakov in the winter of 2006, Vyacheslav Solovyov was brought to the police department of the Dzerzhinsky district. In a drunken fight, the poisoner stabbed a bar visitor with a knife. At that time, the maniac had just killed his own elderly grandmother and his lover and moved into a communal apartment with a young family. In the department, the investigator treated Solovyov strictly, confiscating the maniac's blood-stained clothes. In the department, no one paid attention to Solovyov's complaints about his diabetes and poor health. Solovyov recalled that Valery treated diabetes lightly while investigating the case. In early May, after the trial, Solovyov came to the department for the items that had been seized. As Valery left, the experienced Vyacheslav slipped in the poison. Solovyov remembered that the investigator always had a mug on his desk, recalled Dmitry Adrianov. Valery Shcherbakov drank the poisoned coffee and soon experienced shortness of breath and dizziness, undermining his strong health. For many months, Shcherbakov fought a strange illness, but with each passing day it only got worse. He died in his apartment on September 10, 2006, leaving behind his wife and young son. When the picture became clear, the investigative team faced a problem. Usually such cases are investigated while the trail is still hot, but in Solovyov's case, most of the deaths happened more than a year ago. Solovyov's lack of knowledge was their advantage. They had to act fast while staying hidden. We quietly questioned people and visited the places where Vyacheslav lived and worked. But basically it didn't lead to anything. It all came down to people just describing how it happened. Yes, the testimonies were valuable, but there was no nail that would have pinned him down. Plus, there was information that Solovyov was planning to get a job at a fish factory, and we got scared that he might start putting poison in the cans of preserves. That also played a role. The operations group knew Solovyov had to be detained. The investigators developed a plan to find the poisoner, detain him for a while, conduct a search at his workplace and home, and then interrogate him. While we played tactical games, it was clear he could poison someone at a high price. Amidst the commotion, Father Solovyov Valery Veniaminovich visited me. I had experience communicating with relatives. I thought he would start, as the person had already suffered enough. But he came and absolutely calmly, clearly and chronologically described everything. He said that he himself suspected his son, but his fatherly feelings were struggling inside him and there was no direct evidence. The poisoner's father told the investigator at length about his son, the deaths of his granddaughter and daughter-in-law, and a parent's anguish. Solovyov's mother was a pleasant person and his father was a manager at one of the largest factories in Yaroslavl. It's hardly about them. Something must have happened in Vyacheslav's life that made him this way. Solovyov served in the Caucasus in his youth, where he suffered a traumatic brain injury. And his father assumed that during his service he reconsidered his life, his outlook on things changed, said Adrianov. His father, admitting his own fault, expressed his deep disappointment by calling things as they were. After talking to the poisoner's father, the investigator and the supergroup searched Solovyov's apartment. The investigation was fruitless. No poison was found, but Agatha Christie's novel The Pale Horse was discovered. The plot of the book is as follows. A professional hitman organization makes deals with various people. The hitmen, posing as social workers, would visit those who had been targeted and poison them. Later, this was discovered because one of the victims started losing their hair, the investigator explained. Parts of this book were read in court. After the search, as planned, the interrogation started. Officially, there was nothing to charge Solovyov with. Dmitry Adrianov simply questioned Solovyov about the details of his life with the victims. The poisoner behaved confidently. Outwardly, he was completely calm. By the end, he became less reserved and began to reason, to recall things. We spoke off record for 4 hours before parting ways. Later that evening, the investigator called me. They said that Solovyov had written a confession. The poisoner confessed to the killings, turned himself into investigators, and agreed to show where he had hidden the poison. The officers went to Solovyov's workplace. He showed a small hidden vial outside the building. It contained 38 grams of poison. That would be enough for 100 people. Solovyov then demanded to be questioned only by the deputy city prosecutor, where he confessed everything. The maniac explained that he took the lives of his women because they annoyed him. It's no secret that women are jealous. Tension would build up in the relationship and I didn't know how to break up. He spoke rationally, choosing his words carefully. His motives seemed implausible. How could a father do that to his own daughter? To put out poisoned caviar and not think that a child might take it? We realized that Solovyov was significantly improving his financial situation. The wife dies, there are fewer owners of the apartment, the daughter and Solovyov become the sole owners. Because he was a gambler, he had debts, but Vyacheslav himself denied such a motive. During the interrogation, Solovyov was unflappable. Interest appeared in his eyes only when he talked about preparing poison and the calculations he made. He had a morbid interest in making something complicated that no one would ever suspect. When he confessed, it was clear that the victims' bodies needed to be exhumed, as traces of poison remained in the liver, hair and bones. It was an emotionally difficult moment during the exhumation of the infant. This procedure requires the presence of relatives. Maria, the boy's mother, had only started to recover from the events, making it difficult for her to witness this, the investigator sighed. They exhumed a small coffin in her presence. Residents of the 16-story building where Solovyov committed his first murders still remember the terrifying neighbor. And his smiling daughter and his wife, who would occasionally ask the neighbors for help with plumbing repairs. His wife was charming once she asked to fix the faucet in their kitchen, said a former neighbor of the poisoner. I recall his maroon Lada was always parked by our entrance. He appeared to be an average regular person, living on the 13th floor. Apparently, not for nothing. We walked around the apartment building from all sides. We were looking for neighbors who knew Vyacheslav Solovyov. We met a petite elderly lady in a red beret at the corner of the building. She said, "Of course, I know Vyacheslav Solovyov." A woman fenced us off. My ex-husband worked with him. They used to drink coffee together, and then my husband suddenly died because of his heart. Solovyov later confessed to wanting to poison my husband as well, saying, "I also poisoned Mikhalik." They offered to exhume Misha's body back then, but I said I wouldn't do it. During the investigation, Solovyov underwent a psychiatric evaluation. He was deemed sane but diagnosed with sociopathy. I think he wrote a confession because in the end a criminal always wants to be exposed. He craves to brag about it. He felt some remorse after all, especially when it came to his daughter, despite being a thick-skinned machine. The investigator shrugged, thinking he might have had a chance. He understood that only by admitting guilt did he have the slightest chance that he wouldn't get a life sentence. At the trial, Vyacheslav Solovyov behaved with terrifying calmness. "I ask for a sentence not connected with life imprisonment," he asked the judge unemotionally. The request did not help. On the 26th of June, 2008, the court found Solovyov guilty of 6 murders and 2 attempted murders. The poisoner was sentenced to life imprisonment. However, the maniac's life did not last long after that. Vyacheslav Solovyov died in his pre-trial detention cell on the night of December 1st to 2nd, 2008. The forensic medical examination determined that the cause of death was phlegmon, a purulent inflammation of the subcutaneous tissues. Experts expressed the opinion that by that time Solovyov's health had been seriously damaged by experiments with poisons, many of which he tested on himself.
I made the subtitles.